today's episode of Vice Versa, we're talking about how much EV range do you actually need, the NHTSA calling Tesla's full self-driving misleading, GM's new electric motors, Tesla megapacks, and more. And going back to normal, I'm joined by my partner in crime again, Ricky Roy. How you doing, Ricky?
Doing good, Matt. Welcome back. We're back. We're both back together again. Last week, I think I was gone. We had, we had a guest before that, but we were here. Anyways, we're back, and it feels good. I missed you guys last week. I watched the show. How are you doing?
Pretty good. We missed you. We missed you last week, but Alex subbed in and did a great job. It's always fun talking to him.
As always. On the show. He's awesome. Definitely hope you guys have been checking him out. Maddie, what was your video this week? I'm curious.
The video this week was, I'm actually blanking on it. It was about algae. Algae is a new plastic. I did one on fungus as a possible new plastic, and this one was about algae and how we can put that to use. What about you?
That's fantastic. Our video this week was about modular nuclear reactors, a topic you've covered. Fantastic video you had as well. It's this clean thing that we were all talking about. It was supposed to be the savior of energy, but in the last couple of decades, it's been on the decline. And there's a couple of reasons for it, and I think this technology could potentially address it. So definitely exciting stuff. So yes, check out both those videos. They're linked in the description if you haven't already. And ready to get started with the show?
Let's get started. You're up.
All right. So our first story is about the longest range electric vehicles you can buy. So the thing that we had in our thumbnail was about this 500 range EV, which of course is the Lucid Air. But they break this down into different categories of cars you can buy today. So the Model 3 is a real champ. The Model Y is pretty close up there as well. This is the California Route 1 Edition Mach-E, which is estimated to have about 305 miles of range. Definitely an awesome car. I think those are available now. The Kona is in kind of the next tier, 258 miles, kind of in the Bolt range of cars. The Taycan, which is, Matt and I have both driven this and talked about this, but it has a stated 227 miles of range, but that's way understated. It's going to go further than that for sure. And then, of course, the new Kings. We got the new refreshed Model S coming in around 400 miles, and the new Model X, I think, is around 360. But there is officially a new King, as according to the EPA, the Lucid Air Grand Touring is 516 miles. The Dream Edition Performance is 400 something, and the range version is 520. So they have three different variations. I think it's a good sign when the company made that designation. So the Dream Edition, which is the highest end spec, has two models, the performance version and the range version. So I think what they were realizing is with the 1111 horsepower, whatever that crazy car has, they were not able to hit that 520. So they made a 900 or some other, crazy bonkers number car that could hit that number. So I think they're close. And I'm actually going to be at Lucid's factory in Arizona next week. So stay tuned. I'll talk about that. But we have a new King in town, and this, they were boasting about this quite a bit on social media. But yes, the question remains, and the Rivians are a little bit behind because they're not quite as efficient. They're a little more truckish. I think the Aero is not quite as good. The battery packs are bigger, but they're going to be around 400 miles of range as well. So Matt, what do you make of this? The question that we asked on the thumbnail, the title is, do you need 500 miles of range? Like, how much is enough, or how important is range? Is it needed at this point? What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, Elon's got a lot of notoriety when he was saying that he thinks most people don't need more than 400 miles. And I kind of agree with him. I kind of look at the mileage that we are talking about. It's kind of like efficiency when you're talking about solar panels. It's kind of like a red herring. It's not range. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's the whole user experience. It's how fast does it take to charge? How frequent are the chargers on your road trip? It's the whole thing that matters the most. So it's like, I remember in college, I had a little Hyundai that was this little, crappy little car, and it had a tiny tank. So when I would drive 400 miles, I would have to stop 2 or 3 times to fill it up. But it only took 5 minutes to fill up, so you never even think about it. So it's when we get to that point in the user experience of our electric vehicles, having 500 miles or 400 miles or 300 miles ultimately doesn't matter too much. If the user experience of driving it on a long road trip, you're able to easily find fast charging, and fast charging is crazy fast. So right now, I think that's one of the things that's holding back EVs is that even if you had a 500-mile car, you're still talking about needing, 45 minutes at a fast charger to get it from 0 to 80%. And for a lot of people, that time is where they're kind of like balking. It's like, because it takes me 5 minutes to fill up my tank, but it takes 45 minutes to go from 0 to 80%. So once you start to kind of factor in charge times and frequency of charging, in addition to the range, that's the full picture. So I think all of us who are EV fans obsessing over the range of this is 500 miles, so that makes it better. It's like that to me is kind of a false equivalence, especially when you're talking about average Americans and most people around the world driving less than 50 miles a day. So it's like day to day absolutely doesn't matter. It's only really road trips. So that's kind of my basic take on it. It comes down to user experience.
It's a really good point you made about the kind of being a red herring in terms of the efficiency of a solar panel. Really, just get more panels if you have roof space. It doesn't really matter. Right. I think I agree with you on that point. I am kind of excited about the 500 miles of range for the Lucid Air. And the reason is, I think I've told you this before, but my parents live 450 miles away in the Bay Area, and I live in San Diego. So currently we do 2 charge stops typically. The first charge stop is totally welcomed. We have lunch, we take a little break. The second one is typically the one where it was like, if I didn't have to stop right now, I wouldn't mind just keep on driving. So depending on your habits, like if you drive long distances, Matt, you've mentioned you drive up to New York to visit your mom and dad and your brother and stuff. So that's not quite the range that it is here in California. I know California is a crazy long state. It's like Texas. You can be driving for hours and still be there. But the second thing too is if you follow those rules, kind of like the depth of discharge, don't ever go below 20%. And you don't ever charge above like 80%. Elon's even said if you can charge less than 70, if you can keep it in that sweet spot, the degradation levels are so low, you could potentially be driving these cars forever. And with 500 miles of range, even if you follow those rules, you're still at about 300 miles of usable range, which is exciting, right? That's kind of cool. My Model 3 gets about 270 miles on a full 100% charge. And when I go on road trips, I do that. So I could potentially be seeing more degradation as a result. But yeah, I hear you. It's probably not too pressing. But the cool thing with the Lucid is they achieved that with really good efficiency. It wasn't just like they slammed a lot more batteries. There are more batteries. I think it's like a 113 kilowatt hour battery pack versus a 100 kilowatt for the Model S. But their efficiency numbers are close to like the Model 3, which is like the king of efficiency. So they achieved that range the smart way, which is what I think is exciting about it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was kind of coming from is it's the full picture. So like Lucid finding ways to be more efficient with their car to eke more range out of a comparable battery is where I think the biggest bang for the buck we're going to start to see, where it's like Tesla's going to get better and better about their range, but not necessarily make their packs bigger. It's like that's where we start to get kind of reap the benefits of this. So for me, it's like I'm the same camp. It's like my Model 3, I do not get over 270 miles anymore. And I was supposed to get 310, 315 when it was brand new. And now I'm getting 270 when I fully charge it. So there's been degradation, and that's totally fine. I knew that was going to happen. But I had never run into problems because I'm on the Tesla supercharger network, just like you. So it's like when I drive to go visit my parents, there's superchargers everywhere. And it coincides with stopping for a lunch break, so you charge up. So it's like from my point of view, from a user experience point of view, it didn't really change my driving that much at all. Even though it added maybe 20 to 30 minutes to the road trip to go see my parents, that doesn't matter. It's like that's the part that I think a lot of people who are not in the EV camp are struggling with, trying to understand that that's a possibility. And then those of us that are in the EV camp are just talking about like, 500 miles of range. And it's kind of like, no, it's the user experience. It's the user experience. Look at the whole picture. So
I think the audience definitely agrees with you. Sar Yogev says, definitely don't need 500 miles when my country is 250 miles long. It's a really good point. And this is what's always funny about Europe. When my friends and family visit us in California, like you can drive 10 hours and still be in California. In Europe, you drive 10 hours, you could have crossed like 4 international lines. So that's a really good point. Depending on where you live, it could be overkill. But I think most of the viewers agree with you in terms of the experience of it. Somebody mentioned it's far more important to have the charging infrastructure in place and the charge rate and all those kind of factors that go into it. I'm not seeing the comment right now, but yeah, it's a really good point. If, like, for example, Tesla's is a dream because you never have to stress about it. Mm-hmm. There's options. You could even be like, oh, well, how are you guys feeling? We can drive another 40 minutes or we can have lunch now or later. There's so many options that it becomes really easy, and you can trust it. When the car says, go here and charge, I know it will work because it's telling me like in real time, 2 stalls available, 5 stalls available. So I'm very confident it's going to work, which is not true for every car. We've talked about this in the past. The EA availability is kind of questionable at times. So I would always recommend using like a smartphone app, like have your Copilot if you've got one, kind of double check what the car is saying to make sure, because you don't want to get stuck. And I have been stuck before.
Yeah, a friend of mine has a Mustang Mach-E. Loves that car. I've had it, he let me drive it a little bit. Amazing car. He drove it from here in Massachusetts down to Texas and then back, and he documented his entire experience. And to say it was a hellish experience would be an understatement. And that car has good range. That car has as good of a range as my Model 3, but his experience would be night and day for what I would have experienced if I did the same trip in my Model 3. So many chargers being broken down, getting to chargers where there was just like one charger and it's broken, and the next closest one is 70 miles away. It's like, or getting to a location that the car is telling him to go to, and it's a level 2 charger. It's not a fast charger. So it's like, oh, I'm going to be here for 4 hours trying to top it up enough so I can get to the next charger, which is a fast charger. So it's the user experience around the charging, I think, is the biggest linchpin in this entire conversation.
Very good point. Very good point. Who is this? Question mark has a good point. He says, stop looking at range as range. Yeah, I like good username. He's been here before. I recognize him. He says towing, inclement weather, real world range, 80 miles an hour on the freeway, all lower range. Very true. Tell me, Matt, if you're going 80 miles an hour, are you getting 270 miles on your Tesla? I don't think I am. Right. No. So 500 miles, let's say that means 400, factoring all these kinds of things. Or in a really cold New England winter's day when you're running the heater and the battery's heating, potentially there's some stuff there as well. The bottom line is, like, I think nobody should be saying that we don't need more range, but it's only a part of a bigger piece. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but people have opinions about this one. This is good. I figured as much when we made it our kind of leading story.
Yeah. Well, the next one, which is kind of related, we're jumping into Tesla and the NTSB saying that Tesla's full self-driving beta is misleading and irresponsible ahead of a wider release. And this kind of follows up about a month ago. It was the NHTSA opened up an investigation into the 11 crashes that Autopilot has had with emergency responder vehicles. So there's kind of like this culmination of things happening. Now, the NTSB does not have the power to actually shut anything down. They can make recommendations, but it's the NHTSA that has the kind of the teeth that they can actually do something if they find something kind of hinky, which I doubt they're going to. But we'll find out. The reason I thought this story was really interesting was the debate around full self-driving, and even though however you feel about the head of the NTSB saying these comments about it being misleading and irresponsible, how do you feel about the labeling of full self-driving? Because this is technically, and I know this, I may not have a popular stance here, this is not full self-driving. This is not self-driving. This is still a level 2 driver assist feature that's being labeled as full self-driving, which creates this misperception. It's a communications issue in the marketplace, and it allows people like the head of the NTSB to kind of latch onto that. And this kind of comes back to something that I bring up a lot with Tesla is their communication, their public relations. They tend to trip themselves up. And I think there is a pretty good compelling argument to make that full self-driving is not the best branding for what they're currently building. Will it be full self-driving in time? Yes, I don't doubt that it will be. But for right now and for the next few years, it's probably just going to be a level 2 driver assist feature. But because of how they've labeled it and how they're selling it, there's a misperception in the marketplace. There's a misperception in government circles that could create severe problems for Tesla as they try to roll this feature out. What's your take on it?
I think you hit it on the head. It really is kind of almost kind of a legalese lawyer debate more than anything else, because it's really not a question of the technology. And I do agree that the labeling is, so like, for example, Ford calls theirs Blue Cruise. Yeah. GM is Super Cruise. No, like nobody's suing GM saying, hey, wait a second, Super Cruise refers to an aircraft that can fly above the speed of sound without afterburners, and I'm not going 800 miles an hour. No one's saying that, because that's clearly just marketing, right? There's no deeper meaning to it, whereas full self-driving means something. And I actually don't even like that term. It's a mouthful. Autopilot. I love that word. I love autopilot. My car has autopilot, and it feels like an aircraft, right? You can get in and just let it go. So I would have, if I were Tesla, to your point about kind of the marketing of it, I would probably have come up with something around autopilot or like full autopilot or something along those lines. But really, it's not an engineering thing. They're working on like the most cutting edge self-driving tech in the world. There's going to be some issues. And I think what the NTSB was saying, by the way, the NTSB, I didn't even know they were involved in automobiles. They're the agency you call when there's a plane crash. So they'll come out and do a full investigation, and their recommendations carry a lot of weight there. So like, for example, if a couple of crashes happen, they'll come out and say, you have a faulty blank, and their word will result in like Boeing or Airbus making like retrofit changes to aircraft. Whereas here, like you mentioned, it really doesn't seem to have much in the way of teeth. NHTSA, the other organization, is really what drives the changes here. And I think their problem with it is that what if somebody who doesn't know better, I don't think I know what FSD is. I think you know what FSD is. Yeah. Most of the people I think do. But what if someone didn't and they thought full self-driving, they could like go read a book in the back or something, right? And they're thinking that, I mean, it's
those edge cases.
It's a question of like who's responsible, who's liable. Is there like, it's the lawyer stuff.
It's the edge cases that worry me, because it's those edge cases that mean we can't have nice things, because there are going to be people that go in with false expectations as to what it can do. They misuse it because they don't read all the documentation when it pops up on your screen saying you have to pay attention, you have to do X, Y, and Z, and they just kind of tap through it and don't pay attention, and then they abuse the system and don't use it properly. That's why we can't have nice things. And so for me, it's a concern around the communication, the labeling, and the understanding. And I think you hit it on the head with the example of Blue Cruise. It's like there's an abstracted name, a brand that they can stand behind, and it doesn't set false expectations as to what it can do. And eventually Blue Cruise may end up turning into a total self-driving system in itself. But because it's called Blue Cruise, it can evolve over time, and the expectations of what the system can deliver can evolve. Where full self-driving, right out of the gate, you expect it to be doing self-driving, and it doesn't out of the gate. Like right now, even when they roll out the features for all of us to try in beta, it's still a level 2 driver assist feature. You still have to be fully attentive and in control of the vehicle at all times. And that's not self-driving. So it's one of those, branding and communication.
Roger Starkey says, dear NTSB, autopilot is not FSD. It's not marketed as such. Autopilot. Okay. There's some questions there. Also, a huge thank you to Robert Klauko. We appreciate you, Robert, as always, for the super chat. He says, let's see if this week's super chat works better. I hope it works better. That's for sure. Yes. Great to see you again, Ricky. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for being here, man. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, Ricky.
I'm trying to see if there's any comments that are good here. So part of the onus of why this is a story today in particular is that they are going to be rolling out the beta, their latest and greatest flavor of this, to more people. So during a wider rollout, they're kind of thinking, if we've seen some issues, and again, I think it's been largely overblown. So I guess I can kind of switch gears and we can talk in Tesla's favor for a second. So most of the stories I've been hearing are absolutely absurd, where they've been blaming full self-driving for things, or FSD or autopilot. And it could be like some person who's drunk behind the wheel whose car wouldn't stop. I just saw this in the news where police had to chase this woman whose car was driving itself, and it was an autopilot. So the only way to stop it was to get in front of her and then slow down, and the car just came to a stop, and then the cops pulled her out, passed out drunk or something like that. And so the comments go back and forth like all these things that we talk about, but one of them is like, okay, well, would you rather have her not had autopilot? She would have probably been crashed on the side of the road somewhere, maybe something much, much worse, probably something much worse. So this is really good technology. We should break that apart, and Tesla's working on some of the greatest, coolest stuff there is. They're far ahead of everybody else. They're doing great work. This really is kind of the naming and stuff, and if that matters. But I have always wondered, you notice how Tesla has very little in the way of like disclaimers. I got into a rental car the other day, and before I could do anything, they had these huge novels of disclaimers. You have to agree, and I won't do this, and I can't do this when I'm driving. You can't input an address when you're driving. I can do that on my Tesla. I always wondered, how do they get away with it when nobody else does? Is it just their legal teams are kind of more blasé-faire and compared to everybody else? I don't know what it is exactly, but
I think it's a dial of like how like other companies, or the legal teams have a lockhold on everything. They want to protect the company at all costs, and that's why you see that. Where Tesla's being a little more adventurous, I would say.
Yeah, I love that. That's part of why I love Tesla. Like the less the lawyers are involved, I think the better always.
But on that note, I do think they could do something. Like when you activate it, they could have something very clear flash up on the screen for a couple seconds. You don't even have to tap it, make it go away, but just maybe an image of a driver that's attentive behind the wheel saying, remember, keep attention at all times. And then it goes away. It's something super simple and stupid.
Sure.
But it's like that could help those edge cases from potentially happening. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and I just hope that we can figure out something here so that this doesn't make the news, so that Tesla can just do the work of the great work they're doing and not deal with this BS. That's really where it comes down to, right? I think we're both proposing options to let's let the engineers do their great work. Let's not bother them with all this stuff.
Right.
And part of the ways you got to grow is you got to expand your beta pool at some point. That's what they're going to do. So it's all good stuff. Hopefully they can make it work in a safe and clear manner.
Yeah. Ready for the next one?
All right. Yes. So up next, General Motors unveils new electric motors that will power its future EV, starting with the Hummer. So we've talked a little bit about how when you're building electric vehicles, you have a lot of options. You can buy stuff off the shelf. Like, for example, I think I was reading that Porsche was buying its motors for the Taycan, and that's why they went with a 2-speed gearbox versus Tesla, who does all their stuff in-house. So as you mature as a company, you really got to build all this stuff yourself if you want to ink out every last bit of performance or efficiency. For example, Lucid famously has, they do their own motors and they have all these IP and patents around it, just like Tesla does, to help it. And those are the kinds of benefits that you have over your competitors if you vertically integrate and build the stuff yourself. So GM now is going to be moving to better and latest, greatest technologies. When the Bolt first came out, they mentioned that was like a lifetime ago in 2016. And, they were maybe not the most cutting edge stuff. So here's a breakdown of some of their different various options for motors. They have a 180 kilowatt front permanent magnet electric motor in the front. Again, permanent magnet, DC. These are all like the kind of the latest and greatest stuff. A 255 kilowatt rear and front drive permanent magnet motor. So this is the higher end version. Then there's a 62 kilowatt all-wheel drive assist induction motor. So this is the one induction motor. And I'm wondering how exactly that kind of comes into the equation, but they've got these different platforms that they can build out. So I think that they mentioned that they're going to have these 255 kilowatt motors on all 4 wheels for the Hummer EV, giving it those crazy numbers. So that's kind of the flexibility, which is cool. This is part of why I love electric vehicles so much. You have all this kind of design flexibility that just was not possible. You can look at the windings and stuff. I don't know if they've mentioned that they have anything in particular. I like that Lucid kind of gave details about what they're doing that's special, but here, this is part of their Ultim package. It really helps to, they kind of also do the inverters and the motor controllers, the power electronics and stuff. They mentioned that they're going to be able to kind of combine some of this stuff. This is really the same as, I'm going to keep talking about Lucid because they're the last ones I heard talk about this stuff, but similar kinds of approaches to minimizing on the number of components, simplifying a lot less mass, for example, better capabilities. So yeah, GM is showing off what they're going to be doing from the motor side. I actually would rather have seen a video or a topic talking about their battery side, which is what I'm curious about from you. They've gotten a little bit of flack recently for battery fires and the whole handling of it. I was kind of reading from some of the comments in various places before we started the show, but people mentioned I think it was my Discord. I think it was Bong Hollywood who's probably in the chat today. He mentioned in my Discord that like Hyundai, Kia had issues too. The Kona had some problems, but what they did there was really about protecting the brand. They bought them back. They recalled it. They took care of it. Whereas GM was kind of way late to the game. They just kind of started blaming LG. But there's so many intermediary steps that they could have taken and stuff. So I think the handling of that was really bad. And what kind of scares me is Tesla's gone with the cylindrical battery for their stuff. And seemingly everybody else has gone with this pouch style. The LG Chem batteries that were in the Bolt were pouch style. You never heard about these huge Tesla problems with batteries the way they had happened with LG and GM. So the Ultium is also a pouch style battery. And the new motors are cool. I love it. It's really cool. But I think at this point in time, I want to know about the battery and why whatever they're doing next is going to be better than what they have now. What's your take on this?
Well, I can't remember. It was like when they announced Ultium, they did talk about the batteries a little bit. They talked about the cooling systems that they've got for those pouch style batteries as something that they were kind of touting a little bit. I hope it turns out to be true that they've designed these in an intelligent way. I mean, Elon has said that he thought pouch style was a little harder to manage the heating and cooling of compared to a cylindrical, which would explain why they're sticking with cylindrical for all the Tesla battery packs. I'm not going to pass judgment on the Ultium design until we start seeing them out in the wild and get more details on it and how they actually perform. But I think it's an engineering problem I think they could probably overcome. But it kind of, this whole story, the reason it kind of piqued my interest was when you look at all the companies that are trying to transition into electric, there's all these kind of signs I'm looking for of like which ones are taking it more seriously. Oh, GM's building their own gigafactories. Okay, they're taking this seriously. They're designing their own motors, their own components. They're not going to be taking off-the-shelf parts for core aspects of their EV platform anymore. And to me, that's another sign of them taking this very seriously. And kind of to go back to the article just for a quick second, this thing, this is the Ultium drive controller, which houses the inverter, the charging module, which reduces the costs, the weight, and the manufacturing complexity. This reminded me of the octovalve, like in the Model 3. It's like they're rethinking how the car has to be built to really minimize the number of parts and the complexity of putting it together, how to make it super efficient and cost effective to make these vehicles. And when I saw this in the article, I was like, oh, hell yeah, this is awesome. This is some innovation coming from GM about how to optimize their Ultium platform to make it really flexible and not using off-the-shelf parts. They're looking at it as the whole package, which is very smart. So it's like VW and GM are doing this. I'm hoping Ford is doing similar things to this. If you look at the Mustang Mach-E, I would say they're not doing this because there's a lot of off-the-shelf parts inside the Mustang Mach-E. I don't know if did you actually look under the hood at the whole stuff that's in there? Because it's crazy what's in the Mustang Mach-E. The amount of cabling and like tube and everything. It's nuts. And then you look in a Model 3 and you actually have a frunk. It's like because there's nothing there. Exactly. It's so optimized. So I'm hoping that GM is heading down this path just like Tesla did. So for me, this is exciting from a point of view of it looks like GM really is going to handle this transition to electric pretty well. It looks like they're trying to set themselves up for success. And even though they've botched some of the recent stuff with the battery recall, they are finally doing right by the customers, which is the important thing. They've fixed all the issues, but the way they handled it was not good. But hopefully they've learned a lesson from this, and there's signs of life for where they're going from here.
Yeah, the Wonder Box came to mind. Something that Lucid is working on as far as like a kind of reimagining and a repackaging to save on weight and stuff. Yeah, I'm with you. I really do hope that this is the start of something better. The Mach-E teardown, the Sandy Munro that you referenced, was really enlightening to me. I always kind of thought, these guys build cars. They've been building cars for a long time. They're going to get that part of it right. It might not have a nice UI or software. It might not be as cool or something else, but they'll get the engineering bits down. But you realize like that wasn't exactly the case. And we mentioned in the show before, the Mach-E was it didn't feel like platformatized, if you will. It didn't feel reusable and like, really modular. It felt like kind of a one-off to me. Whereas what they're doing with Ultium, what GM is doing with Ultium is far more of a modular approach. Take these motors, this battery configuration, and build a car. Somebody in the chat section mentioned that the Hummer EV battery area seems really deep. And it's almost as if they're stacking two cells high. That's exactly what they're doing. In the Ultium presentation, they mentioned that, and to do this, you have to have really good cooling because like that heat rise is why normally you don't stack batteries like this. But yeah, they mentioned that you can have small passenger sedan, or you can go to full rate configuration and have a double stack, which is what they're going to do for the Hummer EV. So I hope that they've got this figured out. I hope when there's if there's a teardown, like let's say the Hummer EV, which was they've been advertising it and all this stuff. If Sandy Munro tears that down and it still seems not reimagined, not really well thought out, that's going to be a really embarrassing look for GM. I think it's important that they figure this out and do a good job of it. I hope them well, but I mean, I think at this point they've got to prove that their cars are going to be awesome at this point. I think that's kind of the way I feel about it.
Yeah. Before we jump to the next story, I just want to thank two people. Dictator13 for the super sticker. Thank you so much. And Robert Clocko chiming in again. Come on, guys, with the likes. Hit that like button, everybody. I agree with Robert on this. Thank you very much.
Robert is a wise man. I've listened to him, folks. He knows what he's talking about.
Yep. Okay, so for the next story, this is kind of a 1-2 punch. There's actually two stories I kind of want to cover here. This first one, they're both Tesla Megapack related, is they're building a Tesla Megapack combined with solar to replace a 562 megawatt coal plant. It's one of the largest coal plants in New Mexico that's going to be getting replaced by this setup. And in the setup, what was it? It's replacing the coal plant, which costs about $45 per megawatt hour for production in 2018 and 2019. And they were considering potentially doing something like retrofitting the coal plant with carbon capture to make it clean coal. But that project was projected to be about $1.5 billion to do. And in comparison, going solar with a battery is going to give you a reduced per megawatt hour cost and cost less to build out than retrofitting this old coal power plant, which is why it's getting retired. And they were trying to hold on to it to keep those jobs. And this controversial statement, but why I admire that they're trying to hold people's jobs. There are so many more jobs and so much more potential in the green energy industry than in coal. It's important to keep looking forward, not back. And there is so many jobs opening up in green energy. It's kind of incredible. But this ties into this other story that we wanted to kind of cover, which Tesla breaks new ground on a mega factory. And they broke ground on this in, where was it? It's in Lathrop, California. Yeah, and I found this fascinating that they're building a mega factory to build the megapacks that are used in installations like this story we just talked about. And it's curious that they're not doing this in the Nevada Gigafactory. And one of the kind of like thinking around that is because this might be logistics, because they've announced that they're using LFP batteries for their megapack installations. And that's going to be provided by CATL. So having this in Lathrop is probably good for logistics and operations for assembling these megapacks from batteries that are shipped over from China. So it may be why they're building it there. But this is just, to me, an exciting kind of like a little announcement from the Tesla Energy division of, it's really cool to see this kind of ramping up, because we're going to see more and more of these installations replacing coal peaker plants, natural gas peaker plants. It's just going to continue the trickle over the next few years, and it's neat to see them building out a mega factory. What's your take on this?
Yeah, before I get started, thank you to David McCarthy for the super chat and the super sticker. We really appreciate you, as always. Yeah, this is a fun one. Again, Tesla like absolutely perplexes me. I've always been told you can't start a business in California, like it's impossible, and here they are producing automobiles. Which I did not think was possible. It's a very expensive state. We were just talking about this before the show. Real estate, labor prices, electricity prices. It's like the craziest place to do business. And yet Tesla seemingly does it. So what are we missing? What is everybody else missing is what I always wonder. Tesla is just another... I think we need to award Tesla the job of doing the high-speed transit rail system that we've been talking about in California for the longest time, and it'll never happen unless apparently Tesla does it, because they'll figure it out. So there's something there. There's something with Tesla and how they do business that is just amazing. But this is really interesting. I hate the idea of spending, like putting bad money after good. Is that the expression? Like wasting your money on something stupid like a coal plant. Retrofitting a coal power plant is not a good idea, because even if you get into carbon capture and try to clean it up a little bit, it's still going to be cost prohibitive in a matter of years. So you're spending money for nothing. If that is it's kind of like if you have an old car and it's just constantly breaking down and costing you money. At some point, you're better off saying, get rid of this car, sell it for whatever I can, and buy a new car. Because otherwise, you're going to probably in the next 10 years spend as much money and you have an old, crappy car compared to a new car. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of my take on it generally. And I do love that they're building a mega factory for mega packs, which is interesting. It is a weird move. You mentioned the logistics supply chain kind of benefits there. Lathrop and Sparks, Nevada aren't that far apart. Kind of wondering if, I'm not exactly sure their thought process there.
Yeah.
Especially California prices and stuff, but it's going to be super awesome. I love that they're using lithium iron phosphate. Definitely chemistry for this application. And how cool is that? I mean, they're building more and more of these battery packs. And clearly there's interest and demand. So there's going to be that customer who's looking to buy this stuff. And in some cases, like Hornsdale in Australia and some other installations, it was like life or death. Like it was hugely required. But I think as they build out a mega factory for this particular task, we can see more municipalities adding this just to save money and add redundancy and backup power and stuff. So I love it. Love hearing about this.
Yeah, the fact that it's going to be dedicated to megapacks to me says it avoids distraction inside the gigafactory. They can keep that humming along the way it's currently working, and they don't have to distract themselves with spinning up a separate line. This won't get distracted by any of that. It's completely separate from car manufacturing, from the batteries that are being used in cars. It's completely separate. So I just wonder if it's just a operational logistics kind of point of view of just. But your point is correct of like, why Lathrop? It's like, wouldn't there be a more affordable place to do this than doing this in California? Like, I'm assuming Nevada would have, if they wanted to spin something else up in Nevada, they probably would have been happy to do that with huge discounts and tax breaks and things like that. So I'm curious. I wonder if we'll ever find out what the story is behind this.
I'm sure the big commercial customers for electricity, for example, pay a lot less than we do residentially, but still, I'm going to go off on a limb and say that they're going to pay triple the electricity prices that they would if they just went a couple hundred miles east into Nevada to do the same thing. But yeah, somebody mentioned that carbon capture is a myth, and it's I think why invest in something old and bad when there's, it's like, would you rather fix a tube TV or buy a new LCD flat screen? It's kind of, could you imagine somebody shopping for like a new tube for their projection TV? I don't know. Old technology, it's time to make a move. I think people should be bold and embrace the new stuff whenever possible.
We could get into a whole debate about carbon capture.
I mean, I love trees. Trees are the original gangsters of carbon capture.
The OG. Well,
should we do one last story? You want to break down for comments? What do you think?
Let's break down for comments.
Okay.
I think let's just call that one our last story for the day. So we'll start combing through the comments to chime in on any thoughts on this, or if there's any other stories you want to bring up.
There's a couple of references to Tony Seba, who I'm a big fan of. Chris Heath says, Tony Seba, solar and batteries, ditch the rest. He's talking about the price curve for wind and renewables, especially when you add batteries, is going to just make coal stupid. It'd be a stupid thing to do to run a coal plant. It wouldn't make any sense. And he puts it at around 3 cents per kilowatt hour. When you can get to that point, coal becomes useless. So don't wait till the end. Sometimes you got to be brave and just jump ahead of time. Don't wait till the train crashes or goes over the cliff. Like you see the cliff coming, just jump out early, right?
So many good comments in here.
Yeah, there are some good. Mystic Wolf says Nevada already has a shortage of manpower. They don't need to make that any worse. That's true everywhere. If you think Nevada has a shortage, what do you think it's like in California? Matt mentioned the same thing in Boston, in Massachusetts. So it's a common problem.
Yep.
Who has this mentioned that Lathrop is using the CATL batteries imported from China? You alluded to that. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Totally makes sense.
Chris Heath hitting it on the head. We should just stop burning stuff. Yes. 100%.
Yeah. One of the things I get, and I'm sure you get the same thing, Matt, is we joke about this, but nothing makes people an environmentalist like bashing solar and batteries and stuff. Suddenly, there's so much emissions and CO2 in the production of a solar panel. Okay, so suddenly that matters. But if you have to burn something to make something that you can use for decades, right? Don't burn it for the instant, right? That's what coal and natural gas or gasoline is. You're burning it literally for 1 second, and you have to live with the ramifications of that decision forever. If you have to burn something, which increasingly we won't have to, but if you have to burn something to make a solar panel that'll last for 30 years, how could you even equate the two? That's kind of my thinking. There's some Rivian comments. That's pretty exciting. Did you watch that video of RJ getting emotional with the?
Yes. I got a
What'd
little
you think
choked
about
up
that?
too. It's like he's
I did
been
too.
working so hard and so long to get to where they are today. It was interesting to see the emotional response he had to finally achieving their goal.
I completely agree. He's such a cool dude. He falls into that category of people that are very lovable. You're cheering for him. He has that genuine authenticity that I loved. And super cool video, super proud of the team. I love those cars. If I've told you before, if there was one, like money was no object, one EV I'd want, it would be the SUV, the R1S. I love that thing.
Yeah. So many comments on carbon capture. It's yeah. Like RCDIY brought up, don't forget Elon has a carbon capture prize, so put up or shut up, show it working and get paid. My take on carbon capture is I think it's getting wrapped up. I think it's getting a bad rap, personally. It's like, because everybody equates it to, oh, it's just big oil's excuse to keep burning. There's more reasons to do carbon capture than just to slap it onto a coal plant. If they can make it affordable to do, it's like we've put too much carbon into the atmosphere, even for trees. Even if we planted 1 million trees, it's not going to get rid of it all overnight. And there are things that we can do with that carbon that are really interesting. Like there's cement, that this carbon infused cement that is actually, because you're infusing it with carbon, it actually makes it stronger than regular cement. It's sequestering that carbon forever in the cement. So it's like there's these benefits that you can get by using the carbon. And if they can find a cost-effective way to have a factory that's literally just pulling it out of the air, not necessarily because it's strapped to a coal plant, it's like there could be a viable business there, but it's so expensive right now to do it. It's like, obviously it's not there right now, but anything that's new is going to be expensive to start. So if companies like, was it Climeworks? I think that's the company that's doing it right now. They just opened up their first plant. If they can prove that they can get economic viability to that plant, it's like more power to them. But there's a lot of people that bash it because it's used as a crutch by the oil industry. And for that, I agree 100%. We should not be using carbon capture as an excuse to continue to burn things.
Yeah, I do like the idea of synergies where you're able to extract like a byproduct of some other process to put to a functional use. So yeah, it definitely we should be researched, and hopefully there's a good place for it.
Roger
What?
Starkey. Sorry, go. Can I just bring
Go
this
ahead,
up?
you go.
Roger Starkey said, off topic, Redwood, QuantumScape, Ford, discuss.
That is, it's like a game show. It's like
Yeah.
$64,000 pyramid or something. So I think you've done a video on recycling. Redwood, I think Redwood Materials is the recycling company. I have one planned as well. I didn't speak with Redwood. There are a couple others I did speak with, so that video should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. QuantumScape, I think I need to dig in deeper, but I wasn't especially thrilled at the prospects. I feel like it's kind of a shot in the dark. There's a lot to prove. If they're able to pull it off, it'd be amazing. So I'm cheering for them, but tough sledding, I think, for them. Ford, not sure about Ford. The F-150 is rolling off the line. They're also building that. They're in early pre-production models of the F-150 Lightning, which is cool.
The latest news is I think that Ford did a deal with Redwood, which is one of the other pieces of news. I don't know if there's a connection to QuantumScape with Ford. If there is, I may have missed that in the news, but the big news was that
has a investment.
Yeah,
maybe Ford does.
Yeah, I think Redwood is showing that they're more than just battery recycling. They're going to be a material supplier. They have bigger ambitions than I really expected them to have, which is pretty cool. And so I think they're going to evolve into kind of a big player in the market in ways it's not just recycling. They're going to be a material supplier in a big way, which is why companies like I think Ford are coming to them as being a partner. QuantumScape, I'm with you. It's like there's a lot that they have to prove, and a lot of people have written them off, and a lot of people have said, "Oh, it's a scam. It's debunked." And I don't go that far. It's more of we got to give them space and time to kind of prove out what they're claiming, and then we can judge them based on what they deliver. I'm rooting for them. I hope they succeed, but time will tell.
Yeah, well said. So Michael Altoon had brought up that the UK is in crisis right now. A few companies stopped trading gas. BP has stopped delivering to a lot of gas stations. So I'm thinking this is like gasoline for cars. There's also some mention about like natural gas and some other things, but I think it's gasoline. So I hadn't heard about that. Do you know anything about that? Have you followed the news at all?
No, no.
Gotcha. Yeah. We'll have to look into it, but there's going to be some disruptions, and that's for me. Having an electric car is one of those kind of hedges against that, if you will. Gas prices in California right now are $4.20 or so. I just spent $80 filling up my gasoline Honda Pilot, which until I get an R1S and I have like 7 or 8 seat capacity, I can't get rid of yet. But that's painful. For $80, I could drive my Tesla for like 2,000 miles or something.
Yeah.
Compared to 300. It's a no-brainer. It's crazy.
Bong Hollywood said, I'm only days left on my 1 year of anniversary of owning my solar plus battery and a Model 3. And I've gotten my 3 months on getting my full ROI already for my solar and battery.
Yeah, Bong, he had a killer job of looking up all the incentives and all the different packages. He's like, if you're thinking about all that kind of stuff, you got to talk to this guy. He's your man. He knows what he's doing.
It sounds like it. Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, I think the shortages, I think that's just kind of the everything. There's a shortage of everything at this point. Dictator says they're having a cow shortage as well. I think he's referring to the UK. There are some meat shortages. People have been kind of concerned with that. There's just a lot of stuff going on. Well, I'm hoping that people can.
I was gonna say before the show,
return to a normalcy.
Yeah, before the show, you and I were talking about homes and things like that, and it's not a surprise. I'm working on building a home, but it's really delayed because of labor shortages and part shortages. And I was telling Ricky that there's zip sheathing, which is a common sheathing that's put on the outside of homes. That was like non-existent for months, and my builder was telling us like how they just could not get their hands on zip sheathing anywhere for months. And I was actually just at their factory yesterday and got to see huge stacks of zip sheathing, and they were very excited they had stacks of zip sheathing because it was so hard for so long. And the supply chain is going to take a long time to work out, and I don't care what industry you're talking about, cars, home building, everybody's feeling it. So it's going to take a while for this to kind of work out.
Yeah, agreed. Jambe says, is it time for another nagagram, like another a nagging session for some more likes? You know what? It's not my word. It's his idea. So I'm just the messenger at this point.
Hit that like button.
Hit that like button. There was one comment. Oh yeah. So Jack Mott says, so even after degradation, they'd still have 450 miles of range. Again, I think talking about Lucid.
Yep.
Yeah. When you go to higher and higher ranges, everything gets more interesting. It's very true. I would love that.
But that only comes with efficiency because, I mean, think about how many batteries have to go into a Lucid. You could build how many Model 3s with that number of batteries? You could build 3 or 4 cars versus one using the same number of batteries.
The Lucid or the Rivian? The Lucid is about 100.
I'm talking about like Lucid, like Lucid's how many kilowatt?
112, 113, something like that.
Right. And I compare that to a standard range Model 3.
A standard range, okay, yeah.
Right. So like
almost 2.
Right. You could build multiple cars with the same number of batteries.
Yeah. So if we're cell constrained and material supply chain would be better off building 2 little short range cars. That's probably the better question because 500-mile range EV, good idea? Sure, I'll take one. But the bigger question is, would you rather have one of those or 2 250-mile range EVs, right? Because
right.
We could be replacing 2 cars on the road. Good point. It's a really good point. That's probably the right way to frame it. I think Jambe just stumbled upon a $1 billion idea. He says, what if we add a helium bladder to the car that will make it lighter? Jambe, go get that patent right now. It'd be almost like a blimp car almost at that point.
With the jets that Elon wants to put on the Roadster. Make it lighter and then just like... That'd be kind of crazy. Robert Clocko compared the number of batteries for one Model 3 to how many electric bikes you could build with that.
I just got one, by the way. Do you have an e-bike,
Yeah.
don't you?
Yep.
Which one do you have?
I have the Rad Runner, one
Okay.
from Rad Runner. Yeah. I
Okay.
love it. It's great.
I just got my Serial One. It's that Harley Davidson subsidiary, and I've been doing. Well, I haven't really told anybody yet, but I'm potentially buying a new house and selling my current house. So anybody who wants to move to San Diego and buy the startup place where Tuba Da Vinci was born, my house will be up for sale pretty soon. So I haven't had a chance to ride it yet, but I'm really excited to. And I will say it's a blast. It's kind of a crazy feeling. I live on a hill. You're riding along and it feels like it takes this much effort, and then you hit a hill and you start going uphill, and you kind of brace for impact and nothing changes. You just keep pedaling. It's a bizarre feeling, but it's a cool
It's really
cool
cool.
thing.
Yeah.
And if you live in a city where you can get away with an e-bike, makes a lot of sense to get one for sure.
It's been brought up a few times in the comments, but the Limiting Factor did a video, I think this week or last week, on QuantumScape. So I haven't watched that yet. I need to watch that.
Gotcha. So Bong Hollywood mentions Ricky Howe's Electrify Expo. It was a lot of fun. We got a chance to check out some really cool cars. The Kia EV6 is really, really gorgeous. Have you seen that one?
No.
So the Kia EV6 is like their best looking EV. It is a beautiful car. It's a cool hatchback style. And then the Ioniq 5, equally amazing. It is a super, super cool car. I'm hoping they make as many of those as they can because I think they will sell every one they make. I was also at the battery show the week before, and it was near Michigan, near Detroit, in a city called Novi. And when I walked into that conference, it was this huge, massive expo. The whole time, all I could think was, people get afraid of EVs causing job loss. Oh, the Jiffy Lube on the corner is going to go out of business and stuff. But you should have seen this place. I mean, think about how much tech and companies, subcontractors, vendors go into electric vehicles. You name a part of a battery, the sleeving and the tab. There were so many subcontractors, and all in my mind I could think is there are going to be millions of new jobs of all kinds, engineering, more white collar stuff, more in the plant, all like the full spectrum of jobs from electrification. So that was the good news that I always feel whenever I go to these shows.
That's awesome. Yeah, I went to a solar show that was here in the Boston Convention Center, and it was the same thing. It was like, oh my God, there's like the subcontract, like the racking companies that make the racks that solar panels go on. It was like
Right.
every angle of solar was there. It wasn't just the panels. It was just jam-packed, hundreds of companies, just tons of people. It was, I lost it. I bet it was maybe 30,000 people at this convention about solar installers, which was just nuts.
If you could show my screen, I just pulled up the Kia EV6. This is the car.
Ooh.
Isn't that cool? Look at
Yeah.
this. I don't know if they're going to show. Of course, it's like all the marketing stuff. But yeah, so just generally all around
That's
good looking
nice.
car. It's not cool. Look at that. That's probably a good shot of it right there. So it's the right format. I wonder if people will think of it too much of a hatchback. For whatever reason, Americans don't love hatchbacks, but super cool car. I brought that up because, who was it? Mao Zedong said that the Kias are ugliest cars ever. It's like the new BMW EVs. I mean, style is up to you. There's hopefully a car for everyone, and that's why I always say we need to have like hundreds of companies making cars because there's no one car that everybody can agree on. So. Mao says it's the ugliest car he's ever seen. I would advise you to go check out a Pontiac Aztec or any car built from Russia, any Lada, So anyways, good
The
stuff.
Aztec.
This is actually a very wise sentiment. So David B says the market will always find a way to make the razor blade more expensive. Meaning you buy the razor, you think you're good, you buy the printer, and then you realize it's the printer ink cartridge, it's the car's gasoline that really gets you. Yeah, it's a good point. Some companies do really jerk moves. Like I hate Keurig, the company Keurig. I would never touch or use anything from Keurig. And the reason is like all their R&D money goes into DRM, is it like the digital right management chips on their coffee cups? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Your whole business and your whole R&D team is working on how to make it so a third party can't make a K-cup for anyway, and all the trash and all the stuff. But yeah, I believe in companies that are doing things that are sustainable. There's a printer company, which I never thought they would do this, but they have refillable cartridges. So I'm sure they charge more than they need to, but
they do. It's like we have one of those where it's like at the free.
Yeah.
It's better than the cartridges, and it's better for the environment than the cartridges, but at the same time, it's still expensive. A good inkjet printer does not exist. Nobody makes a good ink. They're all garbage. They're all hot garbage. It's just what level of garbage do you want? And it's like, here's $39 for a printer. And then it's like as much for inkjet cartridges. And it's actually cheaper to chuck the printer out and buy a new printer.
I know.
Bananas.
And these get small, the cartridges get smaller and smaller. And I mean, it's kind of, somebody I know joked about this. It's like, what do Taco Bell, like executives at Taco Bell, what do they do all day, right? Mm-hmm. And I joked like, well, part of it is figure out how to put less and less hot sauce in each packet. But the problem is like, you're not really solving any problems. I'm going to ask for 20 hot sauce packets now instead of 10 before, Yeah, I hear you. Definitely a problem. Stefan says, look at the Fiat Panda. Have you driven a Fiat Panda?
No.
It is a terrible car. It's not just ugly. I mean, it's not particularly ugly, but it is a terrible car. Terrible car. I had one for a couple of weeks when I was in Spain. One of the worst cars I've ever driven. And it was like a brand new model year. There
one
it
of
is.
These?
Yes. That's not like the ugliest thing ever. I mean, it's not
look at the
winning beauty
1985.
contest.
Oh, there you go.
There
you
you
go.
That is utilitarian right there.
Wow. Well, I think that's it for today. Any parting words?
Let's see if there's any other comment jump out. Yeah, thank you guys. I know we were late last week. There's always going to be stuff that comes up, but we will try to keep the show on the rails. We'll try to find cool guests. If you have ideas, by the way, you should leave us comments. If you have ideas of people we should reach out to see if they'll be on the show. Jordan from Limiting Factor comes to mind.
Oh, yeah.
There's tons of awesome people that we could potentially reach out to, and some people that we already know. So that would be fun. Thank you as always for watching, and thank you for all your support, guys. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We're live every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And you can always listen to the podcast version at viceversa.show. Thanks again. We'll see you in the next one.